Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this section for joining the webinar about SureServe's property MOT offer. We are delighted to be joined this afternoon by Lizzie Williams from Poplar Harker, who will be sharing some of her experiences of property MOTs, some information around the regulator, and some useful tips for those housing providers that are on the call. I just need to run through the format of this webinar today. So the way that this session works is I'll be speaking and presenting for a section, and then we'll launch a few polls at relevant points. And this is to try and gauge some information and some interaction back from those people on the call. And if you look at your screen at the moment, there should be an Ask the Questions section. So if you do have any questions, if we can kindly ask you to add them in, we can review them, and then we can hopefully answer those at the end of the Q&A section, which will be at the end of the presentation. We've had a couple of questions come through already, so we've already got some stuff to start with. But as we go through, any poignant questions that come up, if you can please just put them in that section, then we can pick them up, and then we can start to look at those to answer those at the end. So I'm just going to move on to the first point of the presentation with some slides. Okay, so just a quick introduction to SureServe, and then we'll share with you a short animated video. So SureServe are your trusted partner in property compliance. We're a trusted partner for social housing and public sector, and we deliver essential heating, energy saving and compliance solutions. We also play a key role in decarbonisation, always prioritising safety, integrity and respect for our customers, employees, residents and the environments and communities that we work in. We have decades of experience within our businesses, delivering essential works predominantly to public sector and social housing providers, and we have a commitment to quality, safety and compliance. We support the UK's transition to net zero by improving energy efficiency, and we're driving forwards with a number of our clients' decarbonisation plans. We have a focus on alleviating fuel poverty and enhancing resident wellbeing, and we ensure that properties remain resilient, sustainable and compliant. So we're now going to show you a very short video, an animated video, followed by another part of a short presentation. And this hopefully will set the scene for you for the context for the next half an hour to 45 minutes.
At SureServe, we visit over 1 million properties yearly, providing essential heating system servicing and maintenance. While on-site, our teams can also conduct a fully compliant property MOT, a detailed visual inspection of the property, and gather key data across critical areas, including damp and mould inspection, CO2 and smoke alarm testing, kitchen and bathroom inspections, door security checks. We can also deliver windows and doors checks, ventilation inspections, stock condition reporting. Our enhanced property survey delivers a full evaluation of safety, security and overall condition, providing real-time actionable data. SureServe, delivering sustainable energy and compliance solutions across the UK.
Hope you enjoyed the video. Just wanted to take a step back and have a look at some history as to where we've got to today, talk about HHSRS and also touch on AWAB's law as well. So HHSRS, or the Housing Health and Safety Rating System, was introduced by the Housing Act in 2004 and was actually put in place in 2006. Recent history up to 2012, landlords were regulated by the Tenant Services Association, and this function was then transferred to the Homes and Community Agency up till October 2018, when it then transferred over to, as we know it today, the Social Housing Regulator. And looking at HHSRS, it's a risk-based assessment tool of which there's circa about 30 different elements which landlords need to consider. And the tool is used to assess the risk of hazard or hazards in a residential housing or property in regards to the safety of the occupants or any visitors to that particular property. The regulator sets out regulations, as the name suggests, and they set out also the standards that define the outcomes that landlords must deliver using their powers under the Housing and Regeneration Act of 2008. There have been a number of amendments and revisions to the original documents, notably in 2016, where the regulator's actions could be taken to tackle landlords that failed to react to poor housing conditions, including damp and mould, amongst other related items. There are, of course, a lot of other complex policies that surround housing and welfare, which I'm sure many of you on this webinar are far better positioned to comment on. But notably, again, this subject sadly became national news when 2-year-old Awab Ishak tragically lost his life in December 2020 due to environmental mould exposure. Awab's parents had made several complaints to their landlord about the severity of the mould in their property, which sadly were never acted upon. And following these tragic events in December 2020, the regulator of social housing wrote out to landlords in November 2022, asking them to complete a survey around damp and mould, and then requested assurances from those landlords around addressing these issues and others, and some risks in tenants' homes. We'd now like to launch a poll with some questions on, and we'll give you a little bit of time just to read through and to answer that, and then we'll look at those poll results and then use that as part of our presentation just to discuss and expand on some further points. So we're gonna launch that now, and hopefully that will come up on your screen. So as we're just waiting for some of those to come through, I do have a second screen just to my right, which might be your left, I'm not too sure. So apologies, my head will be skewed a little bit when I read some of the results. So the question that we asked was, what is your biggest challenge with regulatory inspections? And some of the options that we give you were coordinating multiple visits, high costs of separate checks, ensuring compliance, disruptions to residents, and lack of real-time data. So we'll just wait for a moment just to see what the rest of those results are. So the biggest section of the poll that's come back so far from the results is coordinating multiple visits. So obviously part of what we're looking at doing today is to talk you through how we as SureServe deliver some of those inspections. And customer and resident disruption is a huge part of elements of feedback that we as a contractor get from residents, but also I know clients also get back, having to have multiple days off work for multiple appointments. So if we can try and wrap those up, obviously that's going to lead to a lot less disruption for customers and residents. So we'll keep those poll results back, and then we can release those along with the notes from the presentation. So at SureServe, we actually commenced engagement around a number of subjects covered by HHSRS many years ago, in addition to our annual gas safety inspections. And as legislation and regulation has changed, we've adapted our offering, and some of these measures we now employ as standard practice. It would actually be poignant for me to pause at this point and advise that a number of the items that we'll talk through today and that we will be discussing, for example, fire door checks, we don't offer that as a certified service through the delivery that we're going to talk through today. If we can move on to the next slide. So on your screen now, you should be able to see our property MOT service slide. And really just talking about some of the elements that sit within that and expand a little bit on what I just mentioned. So we provide clients with a visual inspection based on a handful of questions agreed by a client in advance, to carry out relevant checks taken and report back to the clients by exception. And by this, I mean, for example, if I carry on with the fire door check theme, if we attend 10 properties in one day and complete our annual gas safety inspection, and we also carry out a fire door assessment while we're there to all 10 of those properties, and we identify that 2 of those fire doors on 2 properties are ones that there are issues with, we would flag those 2 properties back to our client for further review and action. So our purpose within, within our visit is really just to identify to see if there are any issues outlined with the fire doors within those properties. And there are a number of ways which we can flag those property issues and identified issues back to the client and their teams. It would normally be via an email directly into their inbox and their compliance team's mailbox, or we can do something via a Workley week book update where we can send information back to the client teams. Copies of these reports taken include photos and videos where required, and we actually hold the remainder of those on our database that can be accessed by clients via our web portal and our reporting suite to allow them to build up a portfolio and build up a property pack should they be required to forward any information to their integral teams, internal teams, DLO or remedial secondary contractors, or even to provide evidence to the regulator. So within the slide, we've obviously got a picture of a house and we've got a number of elements that we can discuss further. So if we look at the house and start from the top at 12 o'clock, we have a kitchen and bathroom health check. And this is really just a viewpoint to help clients with asset management and strategic delivery of works. Where it's most important is, as a gas contractor, we enter every client's and customer's property and home at least once every year, sometimes more. So we've got the perfect situation where we can analyse, review and respond to any issues that we see within the property. So the kitchen and bathroom check is one that we've added on most recently, where we can just provide a visual report back to say whether there's bath panels missing, whether there's damage to any of the cupboard doors, whether any of the cupboards have doors or handles missing, and we can report that back to the client so they can have a course of action to see what remedial works are required. Front and back door security, again, is part of the HHSRS, where we're now looking at how we can help support security within residents' homes. So again, we can report back any damage to handles, locks, for example. Ventilation checks is something we've been doing for quite a period of time, but this extends across from just MVHR checks to actually looking at ventilation, extracting air from kitchens and bathrooms and those high humidity areas. And we can actually use flow meter reports to send back to the client to ensure that we're getting the correct performance out of the kit. Fire door checks, so these are flat front doors, communal doors and entry systems. Of course, we can check on those to make sure they're compliant and that they're working correctly. And we've actually developed a very simple 5-piece questionnaire, which we deliver out to clients to ensure that we're providing them with enough data to make a viewpoint on whether someone needs to go out and do any remedial or repair works to that door. So we'll look at, is the door in good condition? Are there any dents? Are there any holes, for example? And we'll also check the door closures on there as well. So we'll do a very simple, push the door open by 100 mil, does it close on its own? And then we can also push the door open at 90 degrees and make sure that it shuts under its own closures. So that's part of the report that we've pulled together. Additional stock condition checks. Again, this opens up a whole variety of elements, some of which we've been delivering for a considerable time, where we're noting down where the stopcock is within the home. We can also look at insulation in the loft, check just some of those other elements which aren't normally involved within a gas compliance check, but add value to a client to help deliver the services into the residents' properties. Something we've been delivering for a long time, obviously, doing the jobs that we do, is CO smoke alarm checks. And we've been reporting back on these for a considerable amount of time and ensuring that the properties are fully compliant. Working in rural and built-up areas also, we service a number of communal heating systems, but also blocks that have individual appliances in. So window and door inspections, again, are pivotal, where we're looking at the restrictors that are on the windows to make sure that they only open to a certain amount. If you stay in a hotel, obviously a lot of those, you can only open the windows by a certain amount, and they have a locking mechanism on there. So again, very simple visual and physical check of those to ensure that things are working as they should be, and we can report those back to the client. We also, and again, a lot of the piece around what we're talking about today is the visual damp and mold check. So again, as we are checking the heating system, carrying out our gas compliance checks, we go into every room to ensure that the radiators or the heat emitters are working correctly within that property, and we can provide a visual inspection of any damp and mold that's potentially grown within the property. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we can take photos or short videos of those and send them back to the client so they can then look at remedial work. So all of this is fed through our IT system, obviously. And as I've mentioned, we report by exception. So rather than sending the client 100 reports for that week, we may have 5 properties where we've identified an issue. And this allows the client to focus and send their surveyors or their remedial works contractors out to the right properties at the right time, rather than sifting through 100 lines of an email or a worksheet to try and identify and extract back that information. We can, of course, be flexible with that, but as I mentioned earlier, all of that legacy information sits within our database and is accessible by clients 24 hours a day. So some of the key benefits, really, it helps local authorities and housing associations maintain their compliance. It provides a proactive insight into property conditions, and it minimises risk by identifying those potential issues early. It ensures the properties align with sustainability and also the safety standards. I've spoken a bit about how it works, and again, we predominantly conduct this as part of our routine gas and maintenance inspections, and operatives perform this with a detailed visual assessment and using technology, and we can immediately report on any critical issues that we see within that. So we're going to now launch another poll, our second poll. So we'll give you 60-ish seconds to have a look at the question. And also we can pull that information out and discuss those results when they come through. Okay, so looks like everybody's responded to that one very quickly. The question was, how often would you prefer to conduct property MOT inspections for your properties? And we offered a few options, but 93.8% of the responses have come through as annually. So that sort of fits in with our process at the present time. And I think because of the way that we produce the reports and we tag that onto the annual gas survey and service, it makes sense that we do that work while we're there. So thank you for responding. We had one response for every 6 months. So again, you know, there's an option there to do more than one visit in a year. And obviously, if we're going back into a property again, there's nothing to say that we couldn't conduct that survey again every single visit. And I hope you can still see at the bottom of our slide that as SureServe, we actually visit over 1 million households every year. So this is a unique opportunity to engage with customers in their homes to ensure that we keep those properties compliant. So we're just going to move on to a slide now, some of it which we've covered, but it's just really just to emphasise and talk through some of those compliance and safety features. And of course, what we're ensuring is those regulatory standards are met for the HHSRS. So safety and compliance are at the core of the property MOT. And we've trained our operatives to conduct these thorough checks to identify those risks and ensure that properties meet legal and safety standards. And just to touch those points again, those key areas of focus is damp and mould, gas safety. We can also look at those fire door checks and fire safety checks, electrical compliance, asbestos awareness, and also Legionella as well. So I think we are now going to look at just wrapping up this section of the presentation as to why you should choose SureServe. Well, we are trusted expertise and have a trusted leadership team. Choosing the right partner for your property compliance is crucial. We bring industry-leading expertise, in-house capability, and a commitment to quality, ensuring seamless compliance and proactive risk management. We have that in-house expertise. We've got the industry experience. We have all the accreditations and compliance to provide you with a fully compliant offer, and we have a market-leading solution. And as you can see there from the graphic, everything is done electronically, so you can have that information at a click of a button straight away. So just before I hand over to Lizzie, we've got one final poll that we'd like to launch. So again, we'll give you about 60 seconds just to have a look at the question and carry on with the presentation. So as we're running through, the question is, what additional property inspections would you like included in the comprehensive MOT service? So we've put down a few ideas, so pest control checks, garden and outdoor checks, and also others as well. So if you've answered others and other services, we're actually going to launch a further window in about 30 seconds, just so you can free text those in. Now, we've got some responses back. It's pretty even, really, across the three elements. So pest control's about 26, 27%. Garden and outdoor space inspections were about 37%. And in others, interestingly, was an equal of 37%. So I think we need to launch that poll now so you can free text in what other services you would like to see. And we can take that information back. And obviously, as we've said earlier, we'll circulate that all out at the end of the webinar. Okay, so as those results come in, we'll gather those up and then we'll touch base on those as and when we move on to the Q&A section. So I'm very excited now to be able to introduce Lizzie Williams. Lizzie works for Poplar Harker, who's been a long-standing client of SureServe Compliance South. So without further ado, I don't want to eat into any more of her time than I need to. I'd like to hand over to Lizzie.
Thanks, Ian, and good afternoon, everyone. So, as Ian says, I'm Lizzie Williams, and I'm the Deputy Director of Technical Resources at Poplar Harker. Poplar Harker owns and manages about 10,000 homes within 1 square mile of East London. We're a stock transfer organisation, and 95% of our properties are actually flats within blocks. So we have some big challenges around building safety and things like that. So as Ian said, we've been working with K&T on gas servicing for quite a long time, many years actually. But we were facing all sorts of challenges with the fire safety regulations and making sure that we could have all of our fire doors checked, with the regulators' new consumer standards, which are very prescriptive about making sure that properties are visited regularly and inspected regularly. And of course, all of the normal compliance issues around decent homes and the housing health and safety rating system. So we started thinking about how we could streamline all of this work and these requirements into a much more resident-friendly and documented process. So I'm sure lots of housing associations are having a very similar problem in that we're finding it a very big challenge to find high quality, good surveyors at the moment, which means that we want to make sure that our surveyor time is really well spent and well used. So what we decided to do was to start doing a property MOT approach with SureServe. And this is a short form stock condition survey. So the way that we do it at Poplar Harker is that we don't think the property MOT replaces the stock condition survey. That still goes on. But this property MOT, we do it annually with the gas servicing, and our surveyors do it annually in homes that aren't connected to that are connected to a district heating system too. And as part of that check, we look at the fire door, we check for mold, and we give a condition score for the kitchen and bathroom as well. All of that information is documented and we get to see it. We have a spreadsheet that shows it all. We can then upload into our system, and that goes into our data environment where we can start to do all sorts of analytics and stuff on that. So really, we're using this as a triage service. It's about prioritising our time, minimising visits to residents, because otherwise we could be chasing access for a long time, trying to get in multiple times, and that would be really frustrating from the resident's point of view. It means that we can streamline our no access processes. So with the gas, we know that we're going to get in to that property. With other things, people might not see it as being so important, and it's not tested in the court system yet, that we would definitely get access injunctions as quickly as we would like, in the same way that we can do for gas. So it makes sense to do all of these things in one visit. While there's no major expertise required, all the staff have been trained, and that just means that when expertise is needed, property's flagged up, and that can go to one of our chartered surveyors or our surveying team who can look into that. One of the things that's been really successful for Poplar Harker is that SureServe don't have any skin in the game with this. So if an engineer goes there, it's, they can just objectively tell us if there is damp in a property or not. We were trying to look at doing it with some of our other contractors, but where they could be doing the works to remove the mold, or they could have maybe had the work in the past to remove the mold, there were some challenges around that. So this is a very neutral and independent view we've found so far. As I said, the impact on residents is reduced, and with so many competing demands, it's been a really useful thing to streamline. So that's my very quick recap on why Poplar Harker are doing this. And I think that going forward, if anyone is thinking about taking up this approach, the sort of tips that I have are around data. So making sure you're really clear on how you're going to receive data, where it's going to be stored, and what you're going to do with it. Because if we're collecting this sort of data, we could very quickly fall foul of all sorts of issues with disrepair and things if it's not acted upon. So storing your data, making sure it's managed correctly, and then making sure you've got real clarity over what the process will be. So if an issue's flagged up, who's going to own that? Where does it go? What action do you want them to take? How do you record that action? And that just means that you've got a really streamlined way of making sure that you get the outcomes that you want without accidentally finding that you have got problems that you as an organisation know about but that things haven't been done with. But overall, we've had a really, really positive and successful experience with this, and we've been doing it for a year now. So, we're quite well versed in how it goes. And that's me. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you very much, Lizzie. Really, really appreciate your time sort of coming on to the call and just giving us a client perspective. Obviously, as a contractor, we've been running through trying to provide these additional services. And I think with Poplar Harker and a few other clients, we've really managed to tailor that offer in to ensure we give you what you need rather than what we think you require. So I mentioned quite early on in the presentation, it was really about defining those questions, which will give you those answers that you need, A, to get the work done, but B, obviously to satisfy the regulator should they require any answers for a particular property. So we're going to move on now to the Q&A section. So we've got a number of questions that have come through. So I'm just going to have a look at these. So, okay. Right, so I'm going to pick up one question, which I might have to direct back to Lizzie on part of it. So Poplar Harker mentioned staff are trained. Did SureServe facilitate this training? So I can answer my little bit first and just say, yep. So as SureServe, we did some in-house training with our operatives based on the services required, certainly for Harker's properties and for others where we deliver slightly different services. So yeah, via toolbox talks, regular internal reviews, we've trained our operatives into what they need to understand and walk through the IT process to ensure that they're filling out the form, because without the data, it's really not worth us doing what we're doing. So we've ensured that our teams that are out there are fully versed. Lizzie?
And just to add on to that from Poplar Harker's point of view, for things like the kitchen and bathroom score, which rates the condition on a scale of 1 to 5, we provided photos of various examples at each level so that we could be really sure that everybody was on the same page about what we meant by a level 4 kitchen or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Another question which has been posted, thank you very much. Would we be able to do a property MOT for homes that don't have gas supply? Well, again, as much as we are, as SureServe Compliance South, predominantly a gas contractor, but we also look after a number of properties, again, where we're looking after electrical heating, or we do an EICR check. So absolutely, every home requires the same level. It's just at this present moment in time, we're tagging it on to the gas safety check, but there's nothing to say that if we've got routine checks that we're going in to do, I know EICRs are slightly different because it's every 5 years, but yeah, absolutely, we can work out a program to put that through, no problem at all. Have another question. How long on average do you expect the MOT visit to take? So if I use the Poplar Harker example, so we've actually worked that through as time and motion study to collect the information that we need. It's circa an additional 15 to 20 minutes on top of the gas safety check. And just to pick on an additional question which is further up, is do we advise the customers in advance that we will be doing additional checks while we're in? Absolutely. And again, that's a process that we'll run through as we start to develop this, where we will slightly adjust a paragraph in the letter that goes out to the customer. Again, I know with Harker, there's been some interactions with their customers and residents around saying, we need to do these checks. So our contractor will be coming in to do some additional checks for you within the property, just to ensure that, we're not encroaching on something that the customer doesn't need to understand. So Lizzie, I don't know if you want to pick up on that piece as well.
Just to say that actually our residents have met this very positively as well. And that's because it does come back to having very clear processes around what you're going to do if something's found. But generally, if something's picked up, it results in works happening in someone's home if there's a problem. So we've had some really positive feedback on that from residents. Lovely.
Thank you. We've had a question about what training courses have our people done for the fire door checks. And again, just to caveat the point I made earlier, these are visual inspections. We're not certifying the door. So it's not the full-on, I think it's 53-point BM Trada check. This is a visual inspection to ensure the integrity of the door is okay. We have the door closure elements as well. And then we also have, I don't know if you've seen them, they're like a wedge that you can put in with a blue to red radius on there. So if you put those all the way around the door frame, you can quickly see whether there are excessive gaps between the door and the frame, because they should both be FD 30, 60, 90, depending on the type of door, down to the fire regulation. So all of this element has been done with in-house training, and we always sensor check this with the client to ensure that we're delivering back what they require. So we've had another question come in. How many of the checks you are discussing can be added to the landlord gas safety check? Contentious question, but yeah, I appreciate it. So we have some clients that like us to have what we call a clean LGSR. So all that we certify on there is the gas element of the safety check that we do. but we tag this on as a secondary form that we can add to the second part of the LGSR. So we can deliver it in multiple ways. So we can add that on to the LGSR if required, or we can send it on by the secondary checks. Will we be sharing the slides? Yes, we will. Some comments about me being on mute. Apologies. Didn't realise on the run through when the video finished that I wouldn't be there anymore. Let me just have a look. Right. Always the question that comes through. What is the typical cost per property for a property MOT, and how does that compare to running separate checks? So politicians answer. I'm not going to answer that on this webinar. Depending on what a client requires, we have a suite of what we call pick and mix. So we've got various items. So you might be having some of the elements delivered already by your in-house DLO or by a tier one contractor. So it's really bespoke, but we do have a schedule of prices to do this. And because we're adding it on to an already scheduled visit, I think the impact isn't as great as if you do it separately. I don't, Lizzie, if you want to add anything to that about how it compared to getting an external in.
Yeah, we found it very cost effective. Sometimes the price isn't that different, but it's the follow-on processes and how much time it saves you internally as well. So if you're running, we found before we were actually running multiple different contracts to do these checks. And we've immediately seen a massive cost reduction in things like managing no access cases, disrepair cases, and obviously staff time too.
Lovely. Thank you very much. I've had another question about how do you minimise disruption to residents during visits. So again, obviously, when we do the gas safety check, when we confirm appointments and speak to the residents, we do discuss with them about what we need to do when we're in the property. So they're already advised that we need to go into each individual room to check the heat emitter, typically a radiator, ensure the TRV, for example, is working correctly. So actually the disruption is relatively minimal. The only additions really that they probably aren't expecting on the property MOT over and above a standard visit would be something like looking at the extractor system and taking those readings for their extractor fan. So that's really one of the only elements. The additional property MOT, where we're doing stock condition surveys, again, a lot of that we pick up on standard gas safety checks. So it's really a bespoke service as to what you as a client would require. And again, we're more than happy to have conversations about that. So we've had one more question come in. Does the fire door check provide landlords with the compliance needed for the annual check we are required to complete? Simple answer to that is no. That's really when I'm talking about that BM Trada check. So that is a specialist certified fire door inspection company, which we have in-house, but we as a business don't actually deliver that ourselves, but we do have one of our sister companies that can do that for you. But yeah, we are just providing that visual inspection. And Lizzie, again, as a landlord that's got a number of high-rise buildings and you know, flats, etc. in central London, I suppose that's a question I can sort of just push over to you quickly to say how you manage that.
So we use it because we know that we're going to have a document that says we have had a visual inspection on this door, the door closer works and all of those things. Before we started doing this, we did do a huge program of door replacements and also having our existing doors fully certified and checked. So that gave us a baseline. So we're quite confident in these visual inspections, and we'll continue to do more in-depth checks as we need to go. And obviously I can't give everybody advice, but I would say that read the fire regulations. There's some really good guidance notes around the door inspection, and it does say in there that there's like a prescriptive list of what people need to do, and it's really a very useful and user-friendly document. So I do recommend that people read that beforehand, maybe.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that. Questions are still coming in. I'm trying to sift through them, pick out the ones. So is the reporting that we do visible to a client via a portal? So yeah, as we start to engage with that, again, what we're doing at the moment for Harker, for example, is we're reporting by exception, as I mentioned. So we're only really identifying those properties where we find an issue. The rest of that information sits within our database, and yes, it would be visible via our portal. So you've got everything that we've ever done that sits within that portal. But from a compliance point of view, rather than bombarding the client with 100 visits within a week, if there's 5 properties where we've identified those issues, I'm sure as a client, they're the ones that you want to see sort of immediately. Is that the sort of gauge that you've got as well, Lizzie?
Yeah, but we also get a monthly file sent over that we upload into our system. And so I think was something in the question around, can residents see this information through the portal?
No, it was can the clients?
Can the clients? Yeah, so we can access all of that, and we get the information over. And then if anybody is interested, if residents can see, we get the data that we can upload to our system, and then through our own portal, we can let residents know that they've had those checks.
Yeah. So I think we've probably got time for one, maybe 2 more questions. So questions coming about, are the operatives who deliver this service a different workforce to those who deliver the day-to-day programme? So the way that we've actually pulled this together and structured it is we're using the same workforce, we're giving them the additional training, and what we're actually doing is part of the cost of the property MOT goes towards bolstering up the team that would deliver it. So, for example, if I use really simple maths, if it takes an hour to do the check, and you've got 8 hours in the day, we can only do 8 checks. So, if we've got a certain service profile that we need to hit, and we've actually got 10 checks that we need to do in a day, then we know over the course of a week that we need to employ another engineer. So the way that we've actually worked this through, a lot of the cost goes on to bolstering up the operative numbers to work across the property portfolio. But again, more than happy to discuss that offline. And what we're going to do at the end of the webinar, we're going to send out all of the information, the polls, the slides, etc. So you'll have all of that, because I appreciate a couple of people have said they were a bit difficult to read on the screen. And it's actually an opportunity for you to engage back with us and get in touch if you want to continue these conversations sort of any further, and if you need any further information on it. So I'm just looking at my clock and it's running down rather quickly. So I don't want to be halfway through a question, halfway through an answer, and we suddenly disappear off the airwaves and you're all sitting there waiting for something to come through. So I think I'll probably take this opportunity to say thank you to everybody for joining the webinar. Huge thanks to Lizzie from Poplar Harker for joining us and giving us that client perspective. We will circulate everything out afterwards to everyone that has obviously logged on. And thank you very much for your time. Lizzie, I don't know if you've got any closing comments or remarks you'd like to give us? Putting you on the spot.
I was going to say, no, I don't. But thank you to everyone for coming. That was good. Thank you. And thank you, Ian.
No problem at all. Okay, well, we're going to sign off now. Thank you very much. Please get in touch if we can help you with anything mentioned today. And we look forward to seeing you again on the next webinar. Thank you.